Caroline froze as her ex blocked her path in the lobby, voice dripping with entitlement. "You're still mine, Lena. You'll come back. Everyone knows it." Before panic could swallow her, a tall black stranger in a navy suit stepped to her side, slid a ring onto her finger, and said calmly, "Actually, she's my wife." Caroline's heart stopped. A lie, or the only way out? Caroline Hart had everything that was supposed to inoculate a woman against mess. A corner office on the 37th floor of Ashcroft and Bell. A curated wardrobe that fit her thick, hourglass figure like it had been stitched to her bones. A penthouse with a view that forgave Chicago its winters, and a calendar that moved with ruthless precision. None of it stopped her hands from shaking when the courier set a carton of files on her desk labelled Ashford v. Ashford, emergency petition. It wasn't her case. It was her past, Brent Ashford's name stamped in block letters like a bruise. 3 months ago she had ended a relationship that looked impeccable at galas and felt empty everywhere else. Brent, the photogenic trauma surgeon with the pedigree and the need to be right, had smilingly declined to accept the breakup. Flowers, texts, coincidental run-ins, whispers to mutual friends that Caroline was just overwhelmed. She'd ignored it until it started following her into the building where she paid rent and earned respect. "Caroline?" Jennifer, her assistant, stood in the doorway, eyes flicking to the file box. "You've got a delivery downstairs. And your mom called about the Whitmore Foundation Gala." "Right," Caroline exhaled. "I'll sign for the delivery, and tell my mother I'll be there, in last year's dress." Jennifer grinned. "That will kill her." Caroline smiled back, because that's what she did. Smile, glide, win. The elevator mirrored her as she descended. Creamy skin warm against navy silk, a bold lip, curves that no suit could soften, a posture learned from years of being watched. She signed the tablet in the marble lobby, balanced the second envelope under her arm, and turned toward the revolving doors. "Lena, what a coincidence." The nickname slid over her skin like oil. Brent stood by the security desk in slate scrubs and a designer coat, hair still damp from the hospital scrub sink, his confidence wrapped around him like a second garment. 2 associates from her firm paused by the coffee kiosk to watch. Of course they did. People love a show. "Brent," she said, keeping her voice neutral, "this is the lobby of the building where thousands of people work. Coincidences are inevitable. We should talk." He stepped closer, gaze dropping deliberately to her bare left hand. "Privately." "No." She didn't modulate the word. "I've been clear." "Lena, you're being emotional." He smiled for the audience, not for her. "We're perfect on paper. Our families—" "Excuse me, sweetheart. Sorry I'm late." The voice was warm and low. A man in a tailored navy suit, tall and broad-shouldered, moved to Caroline's side like a tide-nosed shore. He smelled faintly of cedar and ink. He carried a leather briefcase in one hand and a small jeweler's box in the other, as casual as an errand. Brent blinked. "And you are?" The stranger extended his hand with professional ease. "Khalil Bennett." His eyes slid to Caroline, softening. Her husband. The word detonated in the lobby. Caroline felt the shockwave run through her body, through the security guard's eyebrows, through the whispering associates. "Husband." Brent laughed, a disbelieving sound with an edge. "Caroline isn't married." Khalil angled toward her so subtly that only she would notice, giving her a pocket of quiet in the noise. His eyes, steady, intelligent, not asking but offering, held hers. "You can nod once and I will carry this, or you can step away and I will walk." Caroline heard her own heartbeat and decided she was done letting fear pick her choices. She slid closer until their shoulders touched. "We kept it small," she said, and felt the room tilt. "We wanted it to be ours." The rings were being resized, Khalil added smoothly, lifting the box. "They're ready." The jeweller's hinges clicked. Inside lay 2 simple bands and a vintage marquee setting that caught the lobby light like a secret. He slid the band onto Caroline's finger with steady hands. The metal was cool, her skin was not. He kissed her knuckles, no theatrics, just a brief press that felt inexplicably like a promise kept. Brent's smile curdled. "This is absurd." "What's absurd?" Khalil said mildly, "is a man believing a woman's decisions are negotiable. We'd appreciate it if you respected our marriage." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't posture. He simply stood beside her, and somehow the floor remembered its purpose under her heels. For a beat, the lobby held its breath. Brent looked from Caroline's face to the ring to the audience and back again, calculations sputtering where habit usually found purchase. "Enjoy the performance," he said finally, each word a stone. "It won't last." He turned on his heel and left, the revolving doors cutting his reflection into quarters. Caroline's lungs rediscovered oxygen. The blood buzzed back into her fingers. The room regained sound, the whir of the security turnstiles, a barista steaming milk, someone laughing 2 stories up. She became aware of the man still beside her and the ring that had become heavy because it meant nothing and everything. "Thank you," she said, voice low. "I don't know who you are or why you did that, but thank you." He smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. "You looked like you needed an exit. I make a habit of offering doors." "Khalil Bennett," she repeated, tasting the steadiness of it. "Do you routinely introduce yourself as people's husbands in lobbies? Only on Tuesdays?" He lifted the small box. "I was on my way to return these to a client. Divorce finalized this morning. The timing was either chaos or providence." "You're an attorney? Family law?" He glanced toward the elevators, then back at her. "Which is why I'm going to ask something I would ask a client. Is he going to be a problem?" She felt the reflex to minimize kick up, the old training that told her to shape discomfort into a joke and call it diplomacy. She let the reflex die. "He already is." Khalil nodded once like a doctor hearing symptoms he recognized. "Then here's another door. We can tell the truth right now and disentangle. Or, if a public boundary will help, we can let this stand until you decide what you want to do next. Either way, I'll walk you upstairs so you don't have to ride an elevator alone wondering if he's waiting 2 floors up." Caroline studied him. Up close, he had the kind of presence that made rooms stop wasting time. Not just height and breadth, but the grounded authority of someone who had been believed by people who had reasons not to trust anyone. His tie was dark, his hands were capable, and there was no triumph in his face at having unbalanced her life. Only concern, and something like patience. "If we let this stand," she said carefully, hearing how dangerous the question could become, "what does that mean?" "It means we buy you breathing room," Khalil said. "Not a lie that eats you alive. A pause. We meet for coffee. We talk about options, documentation, boundaries, what consequence looks like. We do nothing you don't choose." Something in her unclenched so quickly it hurt. Consent spoken out loud felt startling. "And the ring?" "Borrowed symbolism," he said, almost apologetic. "We can give it back now, or we keep it long enough to deter a man who believes closed doors are invitations." Caroline turned her hand, the diamond flashing like a joke that might become truth depending on how you told it. She wasn't used to wanting anything on her skin that she hadn't earned herself. This felt different. Not a trophy, not a leash. A placeholder for a story she could control. She slid the ring back into the box and pressed it into his palm. "Let's not make promises we haven't decided to keep." "Fair." He pocketed the box. "Coffee?" "In an hour," she said. "There's a partners' meeting. I need to get ahead of the gossip before it eats me." "Text me where?" He offered a card, Bennett and Avery LLP Family Law, with a handwritten number on the back. "I'll be there." They stepped into the elevator. The mirrored doors closed on the 2 of them, her curves, his shoulders, the silence full of questions and relief. Floor 29 lit up. She'd punched it without looking. "Why help me?" asked, surprising herself with the intimacy of it. "Because I've sat across from too many women who came to me after the damage was done," he said. "Because sometimes the difference between escalation and accountability is one witness who doesn't flinch. And because you look like the kind of person who is always the witness for everyone else." The elevator rose. She stared at their reflection. A thick, curvy white woman in a navy dress that refused to apologize for the body inside it. A tall black man built like he knew where his center of gravity lived. They didn't match on paper. They matched in the place where crisis and choice intersect. "Mr. Bennett," she said as the elevator slowed, "you should know that if we do this, people will say I made it up to get attention." "Then we'll give them facts," he replied, "and boundaries, and if necessary, consequences." The doors opened onto the bright corridor of her floor, all glass and quiet power. 2 associates looked up and looked away, pretending not to see. The old Caroline would have polished a smile until it shone and let the narrative right her. The new one, born sometime between the word husband and the ring against her skin, looked at Khalil and chose a different sentence. "I'll text the cafe," she said. "Thank you for the door." He tipped his head like a bow. "I'll hold it as long as you need." She watched him disappear into the elevator like a story returning to its spine. Then she walked into the partners' meeting with her chin high and her pulse steady. When questions came, because they would, she would answer what belonged to them and keep for herself what did not. She would not apologize for ending a relationship. She would not design her safety to flatter anyone else's comfort. At her desk, the city lay below like a map of decisions. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Khalil, Blackbird Cafe at 1? I'll grab the corner table. No rings, no theatre, just options. Caroline smiled despite herself, typed "see you" and set the phone face down. Across the office, the carton stamped Ashford sat where she'd left it, weighty and irrelevant. She reached for the first file in her own case stack instead. For the first time in months, the glass around her didn't feel like a display case. It felt like a window she could open, air she could choose. Outside, Lake Michigan flashed bright between buildings. Somewhere below, a man who had called himself her husband had offered her nothing she didn't ask for, and everything she might need. Caroline touched the faint cool mark where a ring had rested for a minute and found, to her surprise, that she missed the weight. Not the metal, but the idea. Maybe the performance wasn't the point. Maybe the point was the door. She stood, smoothed her dress over her hips, and went to walk through it. Blackbird Cafe smelled like orange zest and new beginnings. Caroline spotted him at the corner table with his jacket folded over the chair back and a legal pad already open, as if the morning had been waiting for a verdict. Khalil rose when she approached, that same quiet steadiness rearranging the air around him. "I promised options, not theatre," he said, gesturing to the seat. "How's your breathing?" "Present," she said, surprised to find it true. The ring-shaped cool on her finger had faded, but not the feeling it had sparked. "Thank you for the elevator and the lobby and the door." He smiled. "Let's build you a lock." He wrote 3 words at the top of the page. Truth. Boundaries. Proof. "Truth," he said, tapping the first. "We don't invent anything we can't carry under oath. If anyone asks, I'll say exactly what happened. I intervened in a public confrontation because you looked unsafe, and we used the moment to set a boundary. Boundary is the second word. What will you allow? What is a hard no? The third is proof. If your ex escalates, we document. Times, places, calls, witnesses. Your safety shouldn't depend on anyone's mood." Caroline watched his hands move, broad palms, clean nails, a faint ink stain near his thumb from the pen. "I can do documentation," she said. "I build cases for a living. But what about the in-between, the gossip, the hallways, my mother?" "I can't fix gossip," he said, "but we can starve it. A simple, consistent sentence. I'm married is a hurricane to people who feed on half-truths. A calmer line. I'm not available. My personal life is my private life. I'm safe and happy. Repeat it until the appetite dies." "And my mother?" His mouth tipped. "My condolences. I was supposed to go to the Whitmore Gala tonight." She took a sip of coffee, the citrus cutting through a knot behind her ribs. "My mother will parade men like options. Brent will be there because the Whitmores sponsor half the city." "Skip it," Khalil said, like it was legal to do that. "Say you're ill, or say nothing, and be unavailable." "She'll call the National Guard if I miss a chandelier," Caroline said, but the idea of not standing under one while Brent rehearsed a reconciliation in front of donors loosened something in her spine. "Okay. What does it look like if we let yesterday stand? Practically." He jotted parameters and looked up. "We make a short, boring backstory to calm people who need a narrative. We don't post anything. We answer only to people who have earned answers. If we have to appear together in public to make the boundary visible, we plan it, not perform it. And we get a code word for when you need me to step in or step out." "Code word? Say sirens if you want me to end a conversation and remove you. Say quiet if you need me to hang back and let you lead." Caroline laughed, soft and involuntary. "You do this often?" "I help people often," he said. "Occasionally that looks like speaking softly and carrying a spare umbrella." They worked. They chose neutral facts they wouldn't regret. They had met at a legal conference reception. True, both had been to one last month, though not together. Reconnected over coffee, also true now, and preferred privacy because their jobs grew better in quiet. True, truest. Khalil wrote it down in tidy script as if he were transcribing a promise. He didn't touch her, not her hand, not her sleeve, until he asked. "In the lobby yesterday," he said, voice low enough that it reached no one else, "I touched your hand without asking, because I believed the theatre was safer than the alternative. It won't happen again. If we're going to stand side by side in rooms that misunderstand intent, I'd like to practice consent in the open. May I touch your hand now?" The question moved through her like a new definition of heat. Caroline turned her palm up. "Yes." He placed his hand over hers, warm and unhurried, like a weight she could keep or release. No claim, no pressure, just contact. She felt the exact moment her shoulders dropped 2 millimeters. "Okay," he said, lifting away. "Now we're not acting." Her phone vibrated. "Jed's up. Brent was at security again, asking if your husband checked in. I told them to page legal if he tries anything. Also, Morrison wants a quick word about optics." Caroline showed him the screen. And so begins the in-between. "Do you want me there?" She pictured walking into a glass-walled office with a man at her side, whose presence said, "We're done auditioning." "No," she said. "If I bring you, it turns into a show. I'll use the sentence." He nodded like a judge approving a motion. "I'll wait nearby for 30 minutes. If you text sirens, I'll appear." "You'll look ridiculous bursting in to rescue a woman who can cross-examine bankers for sport," she said, getting to her feet. "I'm an excellent prop," he replied, "but I prefer cameo roles." The conversation with Morrison lasted exactly 6 minutes. He cleared his throat and couched the gossip in phrases like narrative control and stakeholders. Caroline, whose talent was the clean incision, gave him 3 lines. "I ended a relationship months ago. I'm not available. My personal life is my private life, and I'm safe and happy." She watched him fumble for a reprimand that wouldn't sound like discrimination and settle on a nod that yielded nothing. In the hallway afterward, 2 associates looked at her left hand, found nothing to look at, and looked away. Caroline had expected a squeeze of shame. It didn't arrive. Instead, she felt the strange relief of refusing to decorate a story for spectators. Her phone lit again. "Blackbird, table's yours if you need it. Or we could walk." They walked the river instead, her heels clicking the cobblestones, his stride unconsciously checking to match hers. The November light burnished the water dull silver. Tour boats dragged themselves towards storage like tired beasts. "You diffused a managing partner," he said after she recounted the meeting. "Remind me never to be on the wrong side of your sentence." "You gave me the words," she said. "You can invoice me later." "I'll take payment in boundary compliance," Khalil said. "Skip the gala, eat Thai, watch a movie where the good guy doesn't get punished for being decent. My mother will combust." "Let her. She's inflammable. She won't burn." As if summoned, her phone rang. "Mother." Caroline answered. "Hi, Mom." "Where are you?" Eleanor Hart did not waste question marks. "I just heard from Marjorie Whitmore that you aren't on the RSVP list for tonight." "I won't be attending." "Caroline, this is childish. People will talk." "They already are," Caroline said. The old reflex to please twitched. She did not move. "And I'm tired of curating my life to feed them." Silence, edged and brittle. "Is this about Brent?" "It's about me," Caroline said. "Mom, this weekend, Sunday dinner, I'd like you to meet someone." The silence softened, just a fraction. "You've been seeing someone?" "Yes." "Name?" "Khalil." Saying it aloud felt like placing a brick in a new house. Khalil Bennett. "Well," a recalibration, the sound of a woman rearranging centerpieces in her mind. 7 o'clock. Your father will ask rude questions. Prepare him to be disappointed by his own behavior. When Caroline hung up, her hand was shaking, and she didn't know if the tremor was fear or relief. "I invited you to my mother's table," she said, "without asking you first." "I accept," Khalil said easily, "with conditions." "Name them." "We show up as ourselves, not applicants. We don't argue for your right to make your own choices. We don't audition for their approval. If anyone disrespects you, I push my chair back and the evening ends. If you tell me you've had enough, I don't negotiate." Caroline looked at him, at the way he made everything sound simple without pretending it would be easy. "What do you need from me?" "2 things. He held up fingers. 1, tell me the version of your family that hurts so I don't step on the bruise. 2, let me practice being a person you can lean on without apologizing for your weight." She almost laughed. It came out as breath. "My mother loves optics. My father loves measuring men by their earning potential and handshake. They will imply without admitting. They will smile while they correct." "The bruise is condescension," Khalil said. "I'll wear thick skin." "And you?" she said. "What bruise should I avoid?" he considered. "People see family law and assume I couldn't hack corporate. If your father tries to turn my work into charity instead of complexity, I might forget my promise to be a gentleman." "Noted," she said. "I'm okay with you not being a gentleman if he's not being one either." They stopped beneath a bridge where the river darkened and the city's clamour narrowed to footsteps and gulls. Khalil glanced at her hands, not at her body, which somehow made her more aware of it, all of it. The curve of her hips under the wool coat, the soft give of her waist, the fullness she'd learned to armour with humour. He didn't armour his gaze, he honoured it. "May I try something else?" he asked. "Depends," she said, because teasing felt like courage in disguise. "If your mother greets us with a hug and a side-eye, I'd like to be practiced at touching your back in a way that says we are a unit, without saying we are a show." "Consent granted," she said, and turned slightly. His palm settled at the small of her back, warm through wool, just pressure and heat, no claim. The curve of her spine knew exactly what to do. She felt herself lean an inch, no more, and the inch felt like an answer she'd been avoiding for years. The phone hummed again. A text from an unknown number slid onto the screen like a snake. "Be ready for Sunday dinner. I'll see you there." Brent, beneath the bridge, the light thinned. Caroline handed Khalil the phone. He read the sentence once and returned it, his expression almost gentle. "Sirens?" he asked. "No." She squared her shoulders and let herself lean that inch. "Quiet, for now. But on Sunday, bring the lock." The Hart house could have hosted a fundraiser without moving a vice. Crystal and quiet money everywhere, the kind of place where even the air seemed rehearsed. Caroline felt her chest go tight as she and Khalil walked up the stone steps. His palm found the small of her back, the practiced touch they'd agreed on. It wasn't a claim, it was a line drawn around her. She breathed inside it. Eleanor opened the door with a polished smile that faltered for a heartbeat when she took in Khalil. "Caroline, Mr. Bennett, welcome." She kissed the air near her daughter's cheek, then offered Khalil her hand like an invitation to an audition. "We've heard so much in so little time." "Thank you for having me," Khalil said, warm enough to be courteous, steady enough to be immune. He did not over-squeeze her hand, he did not shrink. He simply existed fully, and the foyer adjusted. Robert appeared from the library with a tumbler of scotch and the posture of a man prepared to assess. "So this is the fellow," he said, smiling without warmth. "Family law, is it?" "It is," Khalil said. "Demanding work," Robert said in the tone people used when they meant unprofitable. "Not many upside opportunities." "Plenty of them," Khalil replied, "just measured in outcomes instead of margins." Caroline watched the exchange as if it were happening behind glass. The old impulse, to preempt, to smooth, to presell the man she'd brought, rose and then broke harmlessly. She stood in her own shape, thick hips framed in a black dress that made no apology, and let silence do some labour. Dinner began with a salad the size of a hat. Eleanor made small talk the way other people played piano, fingers precise, expression serene. Robert asked a series of questions that were not questions. "Your firm, boutique?" he said. "By design," Khalil answered, unfazed. "High-touch cases. We keep our docket lean." "And your background?" "South Side," Khalil said. "Youngest of three. Public schools, good teachers, a mother who runs a community centre and can out-argue a senator." Eleanor's smile thinned. "How community-minded?" Caroline set down her fork. "Mom?" Eleanor's eyes flicked over. "Yes, dear?" That sounded like a compliment that lost its way. A beat. Robert's brow rose. Eleanor inhaled. "I meant it sincerely." "Then I'll accept it sincerely," Caroline said, and felt Khalil's thumb trace a small, private reassurance against the base of her spine, a tap that said, "I see you choosing." They made it through the soup. When the main course arrived, the doorbell did too. Eleanor stood. "Oh, that must be." "Mom." Caroline's voice sharpened before she could file it down. "Who else did you invite?" Eleanor's hesitation was an answer. Marjorie mentioned he might drop by with flowers. It seemed ungracious to. Khalil didn't move. He didn't need to. The room knew he could. Robert went to the foyer. Voices travelled back, velvet-wrapped. Caroline didn't have to see Brent's smile to feel it working the angles. He walked in carrying white lilies and the unearned confidence of a man certain the world would conspire with him. "Mrs. Hart," he said, presenting the bouquet. "I'm intruding, I know. I just wanted to offer congratulations." His eyes slid to Caroline's hand. Bare. The corner of his mouth ticked. "Thank you for the flowers," Eleanor said, tone helplessly gracious. "We were just sitting down." Caroline stood, the chair legs whispering against the rug. "Brent, this is a family dinner." "Caroline," he said, as if they were alone. 5 minutes. I'll be polite." "You've not been polite for months," she said. Politeness would have been hearing no once. Robert cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should." "No," Khalil said softly, not to command the room, but to steady it. He rose beside Caroline, an unhurried column. "We're not hosting a negotiation." Brent's gaze cut to Khalil, top to bottom, the tally quick and ugly. "You again, the husband. The man she's with," Khalil said, "which is enough. Enough for what? Brent asked, so mild it bruised. To lie in lobbies? To parade around with borrowed rings? Eleanor flinched. Robert's mouth flattened. The lilies smelled too sweet. Caroline stepped into the centre of the room, because if she did not take the centre of her life now, it would keep finding a man. Brent, she said, I ended our relationship 3 months ago. I asked you to stop contacting me. You did not. You appeared at my office. You spoke to my colleagues. You called my mother. You texted your arrival at my parents' home as if I were something you could claim by showing up. That isn't love. It's disregard dressed as entitlement. Brent blinked, taken aback not by the words but by the fact that she'd said them where other people could hear. He recovered to the practiced concern that once worked on donors and judges. Caroline, you've been under stress. I don't want you to do something you'll regret. I regret tolerating you this long, she said, calm now, as if she were entering something in the record. I regret designing my boundaries to be comfortable for everyone but me. He glanced at Robert, the ancient instinct to appeal to fathers kicking in. Sir, with respect, we both know impulsive choices can jeopardize a career. We come from similar. We don't, Robert said, and Caroline's head snapped toward him. Her father looked at Brent the way he looked at charts, cold, acquisitive, done. We come from caring about the Hart name. What I'm seeing is my daughter presenting facts and a man refusing to hear them. Eleanor put the lilies in a crystal vase as if that might give them purpose. Brent, perhaps another time. There won't be another time, Caroline said, and the quiet that followed felt like a cathedral. She turned to Khalil without moving away from herself. Sirens? He met her eyes and shook his head once. Quiet, he murmured. You've got this. She faced Brent. You need to leave. If you contact me again at work, at my home, through my family, I will document it and I will act. Not privately. Not politely. There will be consequences. He laughed, thin and edged. You'll get a restraining order? Against me? If necessary, Khalil said, pleasant as water. And when the court asks for a record, we'll give it names, dates and places. We'll include tonight. Brent stared at Khalil for a long beat and saw at last that he was not debating a replacement. He was speaking to a witness. He turned the smile on Eleanor like an apology that wanted a place to sit. I'm sorry this is happening in your home, Mrs. Hart. So am I, Eleanor said, and this time she meant it in the right direction. He set the bouquet on the sideboard, as if flowers could erase fingerprints, and walked out. The foyer swallowed him. The door closed. The house exhaled. Robert poured himself another inch of scotch and then, with a glance at Caroline, set the glass down untouched. Well, he said, and the word had new respect in it. That was direct. Eleanor returned to the table with empty hands. Her face looked like a woman who had just spotted her reflection in a different mirror. Caroline, I owe you an apology, she said, voice unornamented. I thought you were being dramatic about a suitable young man. I was wrong. I didn't see how he was ignoring you. I helped him, Caroline said, and it cost nothing to admit, by worrying more about other people's comfort than my own safety. Khalil pulled out Caroline's chair and waited until she sat before he did. He didn't fill the silence. He let it become a room where new things could be said. Robert cleared his throat again, but not to dominate. Mr. Bennett, he said, a deliberate shift, I underestimated your work. It requires a kind of steadiness most men never learn. Thank you, Khalil said. It requires believing people when they tell you what hurts. Eleanor's eyes moved to the curve of her daughter's shoulders, the bold line of lipstick unconcerned with approval, the woman in her own life. Will you both stay for dessert? She asked, tentative like a beginner. Yes, Caroline said. She picked up her fork and found her appetite sitting where she'd left it. But, Mom, there's a condition. Eleanor straightened. Name it. No more surprise guests, Caroline said. And when I say no, to a man, to a gala, to a narrative, you help me enforce it, not soften it. Eleanor looked for a heartbeat, like a girl facing her own mother's rules. Then she nodded. Agreed. They ate the rest of dinner like people learning a new language. The questions grew better. The listening got longer. Robert asked Khalil about his mother's centre and didn't pivot to money. Eleanor admitted she hated the Whitmore Gala and went out of obligation. Caroline confessed she loved terrible reality shows and wanted a Sunday that wasn't a brand. Coffee came. The lilies on the sideboard were too white, but they stayed in their vase, a relic with no say. When it was time to go, Eleanor hugged her daughter and didn't whisper a correction next to her ear. Robert shook Khalil's hand like a deal between equals. On the steps outside, the night felt honest. Khalil laced his fingers with Caroline's. No theatre, no borrowed ring. "You didn't need sirens," he said. "I needed the lock," she replied, leaning into him with the easy gravity of a body done apologizing for its weight. "Thank you for bringing it." "Any time." They walked toward the car. Caroline's phone buzzed. "Jennifer, a brief update. Security logged Brent at the office last week. Legal has copies. Proof. Boundaries. Truth." She slid the phone away, the words settling into place like tumblers catching. Behind them, the house glowed. Ahead, the city waited with its 1,000 doors. She had learned how to open the ones that led out, and how to close the ones that led back in. Caroline's Monday began with the glass walls closing in. David Morrison, managing partner, summoned her to his office with the diplomatic tone he reserved for crises that smelled like scandal. She walked in expecting numbers, walked out knowing gossip had teeth. "Questions about your recent marriage," he had said. "Circumstances. Timing. Colleagues don't understand why such a significant event went unannounced. And Dr. Ashford." He caught himself. "Brent has raised concerns." Concerns. That word again. Concerns about her judgment, her mental health, her credibility. Brent's fingerprints without his name. Caroline had held her spine straight and answered cleanly, "My personal life is personal. I am safe. I am happy. It doesn't affect my performance." Morrison hadn't pressed, but his eyes had carried the firm's unease. By the time she stepped into the streetlight of late afternoon, her phone was already buzzing. "Khalil, we need to talk." "My partner's got questions too. Blackbird in an hour?" She almost typed sirens. Instead she wrote, "Yes." He was already there, sleeves rolled, coffee cooling at his elbow. When she slid into the chair, his expression told her this wasn't a courtesy meeting. "Brent called my office," Khalil said without preamble. "Claimed he was checking for mutual friends. He asked about my past relationships. He reached out to my ex." Caroline felt her blood drain. "He contacted Vanessa?" She was confused. Wanted to know why I'd gotten married without telling anyone. Khalil rubbed a hand over his jaw, the faint scar catching light. Then he checked public records. "No marriage certificate. He's telling people you hired me to pretend." Her stomach clenched. "So he's dismantling the cover." "He's escalating harassment," Khalil corrected, "and dragging reputations into it. Yours. Mine." Caroline stared at the table, at the scratches that looked like old mistakes. What do we do? He had already written 3 options on the pad between them. 1. Come clean. Admit the lobby moment snowballed into fiction. It validates Brent but cuts off his leverage. 2. Make it true. Get legally married. Extreme but airtight. 3. Fight back. Call it harassment. Restraining order. Document everything. Force him to own the consequences. "Which one is best?" she asked. "Depends on the outcome you want," Khalil said. "Do you want Brent out of your life, to protect your career, to keep whatever this is between us?" She looked up, startled by the quiet weight of his last words. "I don't want him dictating my choices anymore," she said. "I want to stop hiding. And I want." She stopped, words trembling at the edge. "What do you want?" Khalil's voice was soft but insistent. Her throat tightened. "I want to keep getting to know you, without him poisoning it, without performing." Something in his expression gentled, like a storm front breaking. He reached across the table, covering her hand. "Then that's the outcome we fight for." They left the cafe together, walked the lakefront where November wind whipped hair and coats and scattered gulls. For the first time in months, Caroline spoke not as attorney or daughter, but as woman, about the exhaustion of constant optics, the loneliness of penthouse silence, the secret shame of reality dating shows she devoured between depositions. Khalil confessed his own, his addiction to true crime podcasts, the way he still played basketball at the same Southside gym that smelled of old sweat and resilience, how his mother still called every Sunday to remind him to eat vegetables. "You're supposed to be my fake husband," she teased, bumping his arm. "Not my confessional." He smiled. "Fake marriages work best when the people inside them are real." They stopped at a railing where the water slapped concrete. The city glowed in bruised dusk. Caroline turned to him, wind tangling her hair. "Why did you really help me that day in the lobby? It wasn't your fight." His eyes held hers. "Because I know what it's like to be trapped by expectations. Because I've watched too many clients come after the damage was done, and because—" He hesitated, then let the truth out. "Because you're interesting, and I didn't want to miss the chance to know you." The words left her breathless. This was supposed to be fiction. "Maybe the marriage is," he said, "but this," his thumb brushed her hand, "isn't." Sunday dinner had been a battlefield, but one she'd walked away from stronger. Now the battle moved to offices and associations. Brent wasn't content with losing Caroline's company. He wanted to erode her credibility. 2 days later, Morrison called her in again. "The State Bar has contacted us," he said grimly. "A complaint alleging fraud, that you fabricated a marriage for legal advantage and that Mr. Bennett, as an attorney, abetted it." Fraud. The word echoed like gavel strikes. "Morrison, there was no legal gain," Caroline said sharply. "The only advantage was personal safety. Brent has been harassing me for months. This complaint is retaliation." He leaned back, weighing. "Are you prepared for scrutiny?" "Yes." Her voice didn't waver. "Because I won't apologize for protecting myself." That evening, she met Khalil again, both of them tight with stress. "This complaint could end both our careers," she said. "Or save them," he countered. "Because an investigation means documentation. Which means Brent's pattern becomes evidence instead of gossip. You think it will backfire?" "I think it will show the truth," Khalil said. "That a woman chose an unconventional defense against harassment, and that in the middle of it we found something real." He touched her hand, firmer this time, less tentative. "Caroline, whether this ends with marriage or distance, it has to be our choice, not his." Her eyes stung, not with weakness but with clarity. "Then we fight back." They began gathering proof. Every text, every call, every appearance logged. Jennifer compiled visitor records. Security handed over logs. Morrison, grudging but convinced, lent resources. Caroline gave deposition-like statements recounting months of unwanted contact. Khalil produced his ex's testimony about Brent's manipulations. Each piece built the narrative Brent thought he controlled, and each piece slipped it from his grasp. Amid the strategy and affidavits, something else unfolded. Dinner without scripts, walks without codes, a kiss one evening outside her apartment, gentle but trembling with truth. "I think I'm falling in love with you," she whispered, startled by her own audacity. "I've been in love with you since our second coffee," Khalil confessed. The world still spun with threats and hearings, but inside that confession lay a quiet so profound she almost cried. 6 weeks later, the Illinois State Bar dismissed the complaint with prejudice. Brent's harassment was referred to the medical board. When Khalil called with the news, Caroline sank into her office chair, laughter breaking out like light. "So we survived." "Better than survived," he said. "We showed integrity under pressure." That night they celebrated at the restaurant where they'd had their first honest date. Between courses, Khalil reached into his jacket and pulled a small box, not borrowed this time, but chosen. "Caroline Hart," he said, voice steady, "our marriage started as fiction, but you've become the most real thing in my life. Will you marry me for real?" Her heart didn't hesitate. "Yes." The ring was modern, not vintage, sleek where the other had been ornate. It fit. It belonged. She leaned across the table, kissed him like the answer was already written in both their lives. The battle with Brent had started as harassment, escalated into deception, and ended in vindication. But what endured was the choice they had made in the quiet, to turn pretend into truth. And for the first time, Caroline believed in a future not curated, not inherited. Chosen. The wedding was nothing like the ones Caroline's mother had staged in her head. No chandeliers borrowed from gala halls, no seating charts negotiated like treaties. Instead, the Chicago Botanic Garden bloomed around them in late spring, tulips opening like secrets and willows draping privacy across the ceremony lawn. It wasn't small, but it was intimate. People who mattered rather than people who counted. "Today," the officiant said, voice clear in the breeze, "we celebrate not only Caroline Hart and Khalil Bennett's love, but the courage it took to claim authenticity over appearances." Caroline, in a gown that hugged her curves instead of disguising them, held Khalil's gaze. He looked devastating in his navy suit, shoulders broad, jawline sharp, eyes warm. When he spoke his vows, they were simple and devastating. "You taught me that the bravest people choose truth over comfort. That partnership is support, not control. Marrying you feels like coming home to myself." Her throat tightened, but she managed her own. "You showed me what respect feels like. You reminded me I'm allowed to want joy, not just approval. Loving you makes me brave." When the kiss came, it wasn't a performance. It was an answer. Applause scattered across the lawn like confetti. At the reception, Eleanor clinked her glass and stood. Caroline braced for something polished, but her mother's voice was softer than crystal. "I thought I knew what was best for my daughter," Eleanor said. "I was wrong. Watching her choose for herself has taught me more about love than any lecture I've given." Khalil, thank you for seeing her as whole. Caroline, thank you for teaching me how to let go. Caroline blinked tears away as Khalil squeezed her hand. Across the dance floor, Robert raised his glass in a silent salute that said more than his speeches ever had. There was no sign of Brent. Word had travelled that the medical board had opened formal proceedings. His absence was conspicuous but welcome, like a locked door finally understood. A year later, Sunday mornings had become ritual. Their Lincoln Park townhouse smelled of coffee and the faint dog musk of Buddy, the golden retriever mix they'd adopted. The paper sprawled across the couch, Caroline's legs draped over Khalil's lap. She wore no makeup, only a tank top and comfort. He wore his glasses and the calm of a man who had found enough. "I still can't believe how much has changed," she murmured. "Changed how?" he asked, scratching Buddy's ears. "A year ago I was hiding behind a fake marriage. Now I'm married to someone who makes me excited about building a life." She nudged his shoulder. "You, counselor?" He grinned. "A year ago I was returning rings for clients. Now I'm wearing one. I'd say we both traded up." Her phone buzzed, a number she didn't recognize. She almost ignored it, then opened the message. Saw the announcement about Khalil's new position. "Congratulations, I'm in therapy now. I wanted to apologize for my behavior last year. You were right to choose someone who respects your autonomy." Signed, Brent. Caroline stared for a long moment, then showed Khalil. His brows rose. "That's unexpected." She typed back, "Thank you for the apology. I'm glad you're getting the support you need. Wishing you well." "Gracious," Khalil observed. "It's closure," she said, and felt the truth of it. That evening, Khalil cooked dinner. Garlic chicken, roasted vegetables, the kitchen fragrant with rosemary. Afterward, he leaned against the counter, expression thoughtful. "There's something I've been wanting to ask," he said. "Another case stealing you away on weekends?" she teased. "Something personal. How do you feel about starting a family?" Her heart kicked. "You mean children?" "Eventually," he said, "but I thought we might start smaller, a dog." Caroline laughed, the tension breaking. "We already have Buddy." "I mean another one. He needs a friend." She shook her head, still smiling. "I thought you were about to propose babies." "Not yet," Khalil said gently, "but someday if you want. Kids who know respect and honesty the way most kids know fairy tales." Caroline leaned into him, warmth rising. "With you? Absolutely. But for now, let's test ourselves on one more rescue." 2 weeks later, they left the shelter with a 3-year-old shepherd mix that trotted beside Buddy like they'd always been a pack. They named her Ruby. That night, the dogs sprawled across the couch like borders and boundaries. Caroline curled against Khalil, feeling his heartbeat steady beneath her cheek. "Thank you," she whispered, "for making the fake real." "Thank you," he murmured back, "for saying yes to a stranger in a lobby. The best impulse decision I ever made." "Second best," he said, kissing her hair. "The best was deciding to keep it." Seasons turned. Their townhouse filled with books, laughter and arguments about which rescue deserved the larger bed. Caroline rose to senior partner, not by playing optics but by surviving scrutiny with integrity. Khalil accepted the role of legal director at the Community Justice Foundation, expanding services for survivors who needed more than sympathy. At night they compared war stories across dinner, clients, cases, compromises, always circling back to the same truth. They were in this together. On their second anniversary, Caroline lifted her glass across a quiet table in the same restaurant where fiction had turned real. "To the stranger who pretended to be my husband." Khalil clinked his glass. "To the woman who made me want to be." They drank. They laughed. And when they kissed, it was nothing borrowed, nothing staged. Only two people who had built a life out of courage, consent, and the willingness to believe that love, real love, was worth the fight. And for the rest of their days, Caroline knew she would never again mistake approval for respect or convenience for love. She had chosen the door. And on the other side waited the man who had taught her how to walk through it.